So hello, Sue, and welcome to this webcast series, and thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Most welcome.
And I think, just to start off, you are linking attachment with couples' relationships.
Yes.
So, do you want to introduce that a little bit? Yeah.
I feel very passionate about attachment theory and research.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's because it seems to me that we have been trying to intervene in couples and families for many years, but until the last 15 years, for example, we've really been doing it without a map.
Mm-hmm.
We've been intervening, from my point of view, we've been intervening, looking at symptoms and trying to go in and give people insights or trying to give them communication skills and we've been trying to focus on symptoms, but it hasn't been based on some real clear understanding of what bonding and romantic love is all about. So, it's kind of like we haven't been getting to the heart of the matter. I think the brilliant thing about attachment, which was all created by an Englishman.
Yes.
An Englishman cracked the code to love. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
Not somebody from California, okay? Not somebody from Hollywood So what attachment does is, for the first time, it seems to me, is it takes us to the heart of the matter about what is the structure of intimate relationships, what are the variables that define those relationships, what makes a difference in those relationships. So for me, that's gold for the couple and family therapist. Indeed, it's gold for all psychotherapists because it says something about who we are. I talk about the fact that the most basic thing about human beings is that we are homo vinculum. We are the one who bonds. And we bond with our parents as children. We grow into our sense of self and our ability to be competent in the world by turning to others for support. And what attachment says is that never really changes. As we get older, we are still bonding animals who need to be able to turn to other people for this safe haven connection. And for me, that changes everything in couple and family therapy because I can go in and I can understand what's happening in a couple, what goes wrong, and I have a map for how to create really significant change, not just change that's going to last for a week where people feel a little better, they're not quite so nasty to each other, or they can negotiate more, that they can really create a secure bond. And that's amazingly exciting. I think, it's amazingly exciting, and it changes couples therapy into a safe adventure rather than a trial.
So do you start with people's attachment patterns? I mean, when you have two people, you have a couple in front of you.
We start with the assumption that people are scared when they come to see you. Simple. They're scared because we absolutely need this connection with this special other person in our life. And we need it for our emotional balance. We need it to be able to go out into the world and feel strong, right? So, we are not self-sufficient beings. And so what we understand is that if your attachment relationship is disintegrating, if you cannot get a safe sense of connection with your partner, where you feel your partner is accessible or responsive to you, you are going to have a real reaction to that. You're going to go into what Jaak Panksepp, who's an affect researcher, calls primal panic. So the first thing I do is I assume that people are have lost their balance and they're in panic. So I deliberately go in and create all kinds of safety. I'm the safe haven. And it helps in that we have lots of research. We have 16 outcome studies, right? And it helps me because I have great confidence in what we do. So I feel that my stance in the therapy can give people hope. People say things like, I'm so angry, I'm angry all the time. I don't even know why I'm so angry. And then lady said to me last week, do you know why I'm so angry? And I said, I think so. I think so, because you actually love this man and depend on him, and from your point of view, you can't reach him. He's behind a wall. And that makes you feel so helpless and so hurt that the only thing you can do is rage and scream at him and bang on the wall. And she cried and she said, yes, that's right. That's exactly right. Well, we're talking on a theoretical level. How do I know that? I know it from observation of 30 years clinical experience, but I also know it because attachment theory tells me that she's screaming and yelling in order to try and get a response from him, just like a child. I watched a child at an airport doing exactly the same thing the other day. The child was screaming and the mother was on her cell phone. And, he was screaming, and then she turned and said to him, you're being naughty. Sit down. Don't be screaming. When you could see the pain on his face, So you try to create safe haven in the session, because then you assume that you create emotional balance in your couples, and they are then willing to explore, to look inside at how they manage their emotion, and to look out at how they send signals to their partner.
So just staying for a moment with this example you've just given, where so presumably he is behind a wall. So
yes.
How does attachment theory, how do you bring that across to him?
Actually, that's an interesting one. Traditionally, men don't like couple therapy, but we actually find that men respond really, really well to EFT. So, and I think part of that is that we help them understand what's going on. We don't blame them. We say to him, for example, could you help me? I think what I'm hearing you say is that you see on some level that your partner is disappointed with you and upset with you. And you hear, what did you say? You hear that you're failing, that you can't please her. And I can't imagine, that must be very difficult to hear. And it's almost like you stand still because you feel that any time you move your feet, you're going to do something to make it even worse. And so you just kind of give up and numb out because this hurts, and you stand still. And he says, yes, that's right. There's nothing I can do. Whatever I do is wrong. And then his face changes and he says, and I'm scared she's going to leave me. I think I've already lost her. So then I go in and I help him regulate his emotion. I help him name his emotions. I make sense of his emotions. And I help him turn to his partner and say, I do shut you out. I do. I don't know what else to do because I feel I'm so helpless here. I just see that I've disappointed you. The tricky part about that one is his partner's not always terribly open to that message at the beginning of therapy. So
yes.
Sometimes they are, okay, but sometimes you can start changing the way people understand their emotions and their needs and changing how they send signals to the other person. But the other person isn't necessarily ready to receive that new image. So then you have to help them. The woman says, I don't believe you. I just think you're a mean, cold man. I don't believe you. I don't think you want closeness. And then the therapist, we know how to create these conversations at this point. We'll do what we call catch the bullet. And we'll turn to her and we'll say, your husband just said this, which gives you the chance to repeat what he said in a slow way, and her brain starts to take it in. Your husband just said this, but that's hard for you to take in. You see him as really uncaring, somehow mean, trying to hurt you. You see that. So it's so strange for you to hear him say, and we'll repeat his message 5 times, but we won't blame her for not being able to take it in. We'll say, of course it's hard for you to hear. So we create safety for her, we create new conversations, and EFT usually takes between 8 and 20 sessions, so you inch people towards being more open, accessible, and responsive to each other. It takes time.
So what I'm hearing is you're not actually looking for different attachment patterns in a couple as a way of understanding their communication difficulties or issues.
I look for the dance. I look for the steps in the dance. Of course, of more avoidantly attached people who are scared to trust, who've never really experienced closeness, they tend to withdraw when they get scared. So yes, in a way you are looking at attachment patterns, but you're looking at them explicitly as they come out in the moves in the dance. EFT is it's a present-orientated therapy. You go with what you see in the room in front of you in the moment. You change what's happening in the moment on an emotional level. And because you go for the emotion, you're assuming, and the research says this, that you can create new events that are so saturated with emotion that the brain takes them as particularly salient and holds on to them, which is what we do with highly emotional. It's the old, what we're doing in EFT is we're trying to create corrective emotional experiences. That's what we're doing. But we're doing it very systematically.
So maybe let's talk about EFT. Just so we have a shared understanding, and our viewers have an understanding what we're talking about. How would you define EFT?
EFT is an approach to couples therapy that gives primacy to emotions and emotional signals as the defining feature of relationships. We all tune into people's faces. You read the images on emotional messages from somebody's face in about 100 milliseconds. Mm-hmm. And in another 300 milliseconds, your body has responded to the messages on that person's face. Your body's given you the feeling of what you see on their face. Mm-hmm. So this is amazingly fast. And basically what we do in EFT is we help people understand the music of this dance that they're in, if you like, which is the emotion. Mm-hmm. We help them get their emotional balance, not be taken over by kind of reactive emotions like anger or numbing. Mm-hmm. And we help them listen to those emotions, because underneath in those emotions are what they need. One of the main things that emotions do is they are designed to tell you what you need. They move you towards something. They tell you, I like that, I want that, and they move you towards it, right? Emotion comes from the Latin word immovere, to move. Mm. So we go into people's emotions, we help them understand them, we help them understand how they've been caught in a dreadful dance where they've been hurting each other and pushing each other away. And then we help them regulate those emotions differently, go into their deeper feelings, and send each other new emotional signals that pull the person close. So it's really, EFT looks at the music of the dance, how the emotional music defines the dance, and looks at people's deep emotional needs and helps them move into new interactions where they can get those emotional needs met. When you change how people regulate their emotion, their cognitions change as well, and I think their actions change. If I'm enraged at you all the time, I'm pushing on you, I'm poking you, I see you as somebody who's deliberately frustrating me. Then when I get into my vulnerability, I get into how lonely I feel, how I can't connect with you, how I feel you've abandoned me, I don't matter to you. Then what happens? I weep, I realize how lonely I am, I realize that what I want is to invite you to come close, and then you start to respond to me. I begin to see you as somebody who maybe can respond to me as somebody I need and want. I reach towards you gently and invite you to come close. I ask you, we create very specific kinds of conversations which we've researched. We call them hold me tight conversations. Mm-hmm. We move people from alienation and being stuck in cycles like attack, withdraw, into bonding conversations, being able to talk about their needs, reach for each other, share what they want from each other, and come together and give each other the comfort and support that John Bowlby identified that a mother gives a child in a secure bond. But of course, in a couple, it's mutual. Between mother and child, the mother's the one who creates all the safety. In a couple, you get this mutuality happening. Mm-hmm. So EFT really focuses on the emotional conversation that people are having and changing it in a way that creates this ability to be open and responsive to each other. That's rather a long answer.
No, I think that was a good answer and a necessary answer. I mean, let me just clarify something. It sounded like, I was wondering if some of these conversations you create are sort of ritualized conversations where people have to sort of respond in certain sequences, like in conflict resolution or... No.
The therapist structures it, but we don't structure it the way perhaps something like Imago does.
Okay.
Because the trouble with that is it then becomes a sequence in and of itself. And people follow the sequence, whether their emotions are connected or not. And I don't think that is that useful. We follow the affect. We don't want you to say something in spite of how you feel, or because you think you should say it, or because it's part of the script. We create new conversations, genuine ones in the session. We don't want people to go through the motions, to do skill sequences from their head. Our experience is that only works in your office. The next time they're in an argument at home, it doesn't work. The emotion will take over. So we go with the emotion. So if we're trying to create a more open conversation and a partner takes a risk and the other person says, I hear him and perhaps he is sorry, but I don't know if I really think he's still mean. And so we won't say, no, you should try and have this other kind of conversation. That's putting something onto the couple from the top. We go bottom up from their experience. So I'll turn to her and I'll say, you help me. If like one part of you hears your husband saying this, saying he's sorry, and some part of you kind of can hear it and begin to take it in. But there's another part of you that says, no, I don't believe him. This is too scary. I got too hurt. So it's so hard for me to really take that in. And she says, yes. And I say, so in other words, you go with what there is. You go with the ambivalence. You go with it and develop it. You don't try and replace it with something else that you think is better. So she says, that's right. So I say, good. Thank you. So could you tell him, please? Could you tell him some part of me hears you and wants to believe you, but there's another part of me that says, no, that's too hard to take in. And she tells him, and then I said to her, how do you feel as you say this? And she says, well, I know it's stupid, but somehow I feel scared. And I say, what's going to happen if you really believe him? She says, I'm going to be hurt again. I'm going to be hurt again. And I promise myself, never again, I'm going to... And then she starts to cry, and I comfort her, and I reflect her reality, and I validate her, and I say, I understand. You were so hurt, and some part of you just wants to protect yourself. So you're telling your husband, it's so hard for me to hear you and to think about letting you in again. I'm so scared I'm going to be hurt. And she says, that's right. I say, good, could you tell him? Because when she tells him that, she's actually starting to take the risk. Yes. But on her own terms, in a way that's completely consonant with her reality.
Yes.
Trying to take emotional attachment reality, which is powerful and which our brain codes as all about survival and threat, safety and danger, and trying to override it and teach people communication skills and cognitive ideas, from my point of view, is a waste of time. When it really matters, the couple will come up to those emotions, and it's how they regulate those emotions, those basic longings and fears, that will decide the day. So you might as well go there from the beginning and learn how to play with those. And at this point, we're pretty good at it. We've had 30 years of learning to play with them, so we kind of know the dances, if you understand. Of course, it's harder. I mean, in my own relationship, I see the dances.
Yes.
But unfortunately, I can't always catch them in quite the same way as if I had a therapist in the room with me.
Well, it sounds like you sort of, as a therapist, you have a sort of a mediating role in terms of replaying statements, slowing it down,
You lead and follow.
Yeah. And then hopefully people will be able to internalize that.
But they do. But I think the reason they do is not because, I would love on some level to think it's because we're so clever as therapists, but I'm afraid I don't think that. I think it's because we do tune into the attachment mode. We tune into attachment, needs and fears, and these powerful emotions. And when you do that and you help people move through those emotions into a different place, it's so powerful. If you like, EFT gets the results it does. It gets the best results in the field. It gets those results because it plugs into the most powerful things in our personality, which is our desire to feel safe and connected and special with someone who will come when we call, our fear of being abandoned, rejected, and alone. And it opens a door for people to reach for that and help their partner move. It's very powerful. A few years ago, we took EFT, and after I wrote the book Hold Me Tight, I made it into an educational program. And to tell you the truth, it's designed to be done in 8 evenings or on a weekend, and it's very popular in North America. And to tell you the truth, I kind of did it in a daze. I had all these research projects, and I did it in a daze. And it's the whole of EFT for less distressed couples put into a weekend. And the first time I actually did the program, I had 25 couples in the room for a weekend. After all this time, I just stood there with my mouth open. I couldn't believe what was happening in that room. If you told me, I would have said, don't be ridiculous, that people aren't going to be able to make this kind of progress in a stupid weekend workshop, I stood there with my mouth open. I thought, good Lord, this is the power of attachment and bonding. This is the power of our longing to pull us towards each other, and our longing for this loving connection from another person. This is the power that's in this room right now, and all I really have to do is help couples remove the blocks. That's all I'm really doing. We're pretty good at it now. We can't do it with everyone, of course. Some people, they've hurt each other so much for so long that when it really boils down to it, they just can't open up and trust again. They can't. And that's to be respected. You're not into saving every relationship if you're a good couples therapist. You're into helping people make conscious choices, understand their emotions and their needs, and create the best relationship that they can have. That's and hopefully secure bonding.
I mean, perhaps it's not always about hurting also. I mean, Stephen Mitchell in his final book made the case that over longer periods of time we become more vulnerable in a relationship rather than less. And,
yes, but hopefully the safety improves as well. You do. I think there's truth to that, but hopefully you also get safer and safer with each other. But anyway, sorry, keep going.
Yeah. No. I was just wondering what your thoughts were on that. This idea that we actually become, and he thought that's why we start cutting out things like cutting out sex or cutting out this or cutting out that in order to actually, cut down on the increase of manage the increase of vulnerability.
No. Well, I think we become more aware of our vulnerability. I've been married for 25 years. I'm very aware of how much I need my husband and depend on him. And and so I'm more aware of my vulnerability than I was perhaps much younger, when you have this feeling that you have this illusion that you're okay no matter what happens. Yeah. You suddenly become, wait a minute, I'm getting older, wait a minute, but I think there's also something else that happens when the familiarity and safety and security built up over years and years becomes more and more solid. And one of the points I make, I did a talk on the new science of love for a website called Mind Body Green just recently. It's on my, you can see it actually on my Dr. Sue Johnson website. And in that talk, I talk about the fact that people actually say to you, well, love is scary because in the end, of course, even if it all goes very well, the other person's going to die. We always assume the other person's going to die before us. And I responded in that talk and I said, the evidence is that secure attachment is the best bet for survival, safe haven in terms of mental and physical health. And that's true even when your partner dies, because when if your partner dies, the securely attached folks are better at dealing with grief, and they survive that grief better. And I gave an example of my friend saying to me about 18 months after her husband had died, she said, it started to snow the other morning in Ottawa, and I said to Mags, Mags, isn't it beautiful? You know how much you love the snow when it comes down slow like this. I kind of looked at her, and she laughed, and she said, it's okay, Sue. In a way, I haven't lost him, because you see, he loved me. And the fact of the matter is, I still feel loved. So I still have him. On some level, I haven't lost him. Of course, on another level, I have. She found it very difficult. There's no way to go through life and not be vulnerable. So yes, of course, to love is to risk loss. But what she's talking about is what we know, the protective value of physical protection and emotional protection, of feeling that you've mattered to somebody, that you're special to somebody, and that you carry this with you. We see it in incredible research with Israeli prisoners of war. My colleagues in attachment in Israel study Israeli prisoners of war. Who are the men who go and they're in solitary confinement for 4 years, terrified out of their minds, and then they come out and they deal with that pain and they go back into society? Who are those men? They are the men who sat in the dark and talked to their wife and said to their wife, I know you're waiting for me. If I close my eyes, I can see your face. I know I matter to you. I'm not going to die in this cell. I'm going to come back to you. I mean, this is the universal human longing and reality. It's not sentimentality, and it's certainly not enmeshment, fusion, symbiosis, some kind of codependent. We have not understood dependency, and the fact that Bowlby said there's no such thing as self-sufficiency. There's only effective or ineffective dependency, and effective dependency makes you stronger. So what my friend was really telling me is, yes, you're vulnerable. Love is to risk losing, but nevertheless, there is an inner security that you get from that experience. So on the one hand, I agree with Stephen Mitchell, and on the other hand, I don't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Winnicott came to similar conclusions when he was in charge of all his children in the Second World War, being shipped out of London, and because he observed that the ones who came from a secure background were more resilient to change.
Right.
So he had, so it is similar data or similar observations.
Well, and we have learned so much from working with depressed and trauma couples. I mean, I worked at the hospital for many years, and perhaps the richest clinical experience I ever had was to work with those trauma couples. And we work a lot with military men here too in Ottawa and all over the world. And, for me it is stunningly obvious that if you want someone to heal from trauma, whether it's childhood sexual abuse or whether it's walking through fields of dead bodies in Bosnia or working with New York policemen or firemen, which we do, if you want someone to heal from trauma, the very best thing you can do is to create this safe connection with their partner so that when the dragon comes for them, they can reach for their partner and their partner is there. The therapist isn't there in the middle of the night when they have a flashback, but their partner is there. And if they can reach for their partner, their ability to deal with those emotions begins to grow. They begin to be able to process those emotions differently. It's the healing power of secure bonding is... I really learned it from working with post-traumatic stress disorder folks, and we've done, our research says that when the couple relationship gets better, the PTSD symptoms start to abate. What we do all over the world, it seems to me, is we take soldiers with PTSD and we make them more isolated. We take them away from the people they went through the war with. We tell their wives not to talk to them about what happened. We don't really teach them how to deal with their emotions. We just give them drugs to numb them out, and then we wonder why they get worse. It's not rocket. It's for me. It's obvious. If you can help the partner understand and come in and be there for that person when they're vulnerable, they start to heal. So that's the other thing about if you understand attachment. Couple therapy is not just a place where people can create better relationships. It's a place where they can become more whole as people, where they can grow, they can heal wounds, couples can help each other heal wounds. It becomes an exciting... I tell my students that I often get more individual change in couple therapy and more easily than in individual therapy because you have everything up and running. You have this incredible drama. People enact who they believe they are, who they believe other people are, their basic emotions. They do it all for you in this drama. And if you can keep your balance and you have a map, there's so many ways in to work with couples. It's, but then I'm speaking as someone who, for some reason, got completely fascinated.
Well, I mean, I can hear your passion, certainly. So let's come back to attachment and couples. I mean, if we think of, let's say, avoidant attachment, or
yes.
Other sort of difficult patterns.
Yes.
Is it your experience that it's possible to repair attachment or to modify attachment patterns?
Yes.
In a relationship?
Yes. In fact, we just did a research study. It should be accepted soon for publication. Our last research study, what we did was we took insecurely attached, distressed couples, and we not only expected to change their satisfaction, we deliberately looked at whether we could change their attachment, and we found we could. What was very interesting was that they changed differently. It's so fascinating. What we found was avoidantly attached folks, whether they were male or female, changed a little tiny bit in every session, because we made them do measures after every session, which they really didn't like, but we did it. Okay. So it changed a little tiny bit. It's almost like they let go of their numbing and their lack of trust, a little tiny bit, which is good for the therapist to know, because sometimes you think, I'm not having any effect on this person, right? But what we've learned is, you just keep going, then it sort of chips away, and then they start to risk and open up. But it's foreign territory for them. So you have to help them, and you have to validate that it's okay to have these vulnerabilities and emotions, because we've really taught people that functioning adults aren't supposed to have these vulnerabilities, which is an insanity, but right. But anxious people changed. Their marital satisfaction changed after every session, but their attachment style, the way they orientated, didn't change until later in therapy, when they started to have these open, loving conversations. In other words, the anxiously attached people who were always worrying about whether they're loved and worrying about whether they're cared for and expecting their partner to abandon them, they needed a new corrective emotional experience of the partner responding to them and loving them when they ask for contact, to change that. So it's very interesting. And our follow-up, as far as I know, has been very positive. We did, but I can't remember if it was 2-year follow-up or 3-year follow-up. It looks like it stayed. So, we did change people's attachment to their partner. Now, some people would say that's relationship-specific attachment. It's not your general attachment style. My response to that is, and how on earth would you change general attachment style if you didn't start with a specific relationship? But anyway, but the other thing we did was we put them in an fMRI machine. We only had money for one. We put the women in because we didn't have enough money to put both, okay? Sometimes the decisions you make in research are very pragmatic. What we found was, at the beginning of therapy, when the women were lying alone in the machine and they saw a big X that said they were unlikely to be shocked on their ankles. They weren't always, but there was a threat there. When they were alone in the machine and they saw this big X, their brain went crazy, lit up. And when they got the shock, they said it was very painful. And it was the same when a stranger reached in and held their hand, and when their husband held their hand, when their partner held their hand. Same thing. Partner made no difference at the beginning of therapy because he's not a safe haven, secure base. After 20 sessions of EFT, women laid alone in the machine, same thing. They saw the X, they thought they were going to be shocked, their brain went crazy, they said the shock hurt. Little bit better with the stranger, tiny bit, not significant, little bit better. But at the end of therapy, when they'd had these corrective emotional experiences, these hold me tight conversations, when their husband held their hand and they saw the X, nothing happened. Their brain did not turn on at all. None of the control or alarm centers turned on. The amygdala didn't turn on. They weren't controlling their fear, because otherwise the prefrontal cortex would have lit up. And nothing happened. It was like it changed their perception of threat, the contact with the partner. And if you asked them if the shock hurt, they said it was uncomfortable. That's very fascinating. I think John Bowlby would have loved that. Yes. Because that's what he basically said. He said, the basic way we vulnerable mammals deal with fear is to reach out for somebody else and feel that contact so that we are not alone with that fear, and that changes everything. So we did that study, and it's on my website. You can see a little YouTube of it, because I showed the study as it was published to my husband, and he couldn't read it. So because my colleague Jim Cohn, who's a neuroscientist, you have to write up. I can't analyze fMRI data. I'm a couples therapist, so it's very technical when it's written up. So I thought, oh my goodness, no one will understand this. So we made a little a YouTube clip. If you're interested, you can look at it on the website. But yes, I think you can change attachment, but you have to. I really believe you can only change it one way. You're not infinitely flexible. You have to have these powerful, corrective emotion experiences, and you have to have them in a way that you can process them, which is where the therapist comes in, helping you. You have, if you have those, yes, your attachment can start to shift. And we know from research, attachment does shift. Your people in everyday life, they have new experiences that has them open up more. And, Bowlby said, there's nothing wrong with any attachment strategy or style as long as it's a working model, as long as it can be changed. The trouble is when people get stuck in relationships where the negative pattern that they're caught in the relationship is reinforcing all the time their most rigid, insecure styles. That's when people just get stuck. They can't create repair. The research says that the real difference between happy and unhappy couples is not that they fight or in their communication skills. It isn't. It's the fact that happier couples have found a way to turn back towards each other and reach for each other and repair. They can reconnect. And you see that in a mother and child too. The mother will miss the child's cues. Ed Tronick says a good mother misses the child's cues 70% of the time. The mother will miss the child's cues. But then when the child really expresses hurt, you'll see the mother turn back, refocus, reach for the child, connect with the child's emotion, mimic the child's facial expression, comfort the child. In other words, repair and reconnection happens. People say, there's a lot of stuff in the literature now about you have to be bored in a long-term love relationship. I just find this hilarious. The point is, you don't fall in love and then it's static and it just kind of fades. A real relationship, you fall in love again and again and again and again. And you miss each other, you misattune to each other, you hurt each other's feelings, you're out of step with each other, you maybe even really injure each other, and then you come back and you open up again and you learn to trust again, so it's a constant dance and process. And attachment also helps us understand injuries and things like sexuality and caregiving as well.
Well as sharing experiences and so on. But can I draw you a little bit more on how attachment patterns affect communication in couples?
Sure.
So I think that would be quite an interesting topic for.
Well, if you watch Avoidant, it's often in culture it's men who are avoidant, but not always. You can get avoidant. I'm thinking of a couple right now. Okay. Where they came in and she basically said, "I'm leaving this man. I don't know really why I've come, but I'm leaving him because he's distant and cold and mean, and I've tried so hard to be a good wife, and I'm through now. So he doesn't want to be there. He's pretty difficult, but he reads Hold Me Tight." And he starts to get it. He starts to really get it. And he starts to understand that he's let her down, that she's felt alone, and that he didn't understand how to be with her. And he comes out. He comes screaming out of his withdrawn stance. He starts to risk. He starts to address the one time that she felt very wounded, when she felt really alone, when she asked him to be there for her, and he turned and went to comfort his mother, basically, okay? And he works and works and works and works and works, and he opens up and he risks, and she won't. Okay. And she won't, and she won't. And I just keep pointing out the process. In EFT, we reflect the process, we reflect people's emotions, we help them walk into those emotions and understand them. But no matter what I did, he would risk with her, he would pour his heart out to her, and she'd look at him and she'd say, "But you said you were going to finish the cupboards on Wednesday, and you didn't finish them until Thursday evening. And I'm suddenly realizing, hold on, no matter what has gone on with this couple, they had a withdraw relationship. This woman was never a pursuer. She was never, and now he's coming out and saying, I'm learning, come be with me. And basically she's saying no. And then we start to talk on a different level. She told me this story about how she had wonderful relationships with everybody but him. Then I start to go into those wonderful, basically she's never trusted anyone in her life. She decided when she was a little girl she was never going to trust anybody. She decided before she married this man that he probably wasn't going to love her, and she was going to watch her back and just get everything from him that she could. Okay? And he is not going to move from that stance. And basically, I keep presenting her with little risks, helping him reach for her, helping her process that she shuts him down. And the bottom line is, and this EFT doesn't always work, she ends up saying, no, I'm not, our relationship's improved. We get de-escalation in EFT, and the first stage is de-escalation of negative patterns, and the second stage is restructuring. I couldn't get her through restructuring. She said, our relationship's improved, we're not having these terrible fights anymore, he's much better as a husband, and basically I'm not going to risk. I'm not going to let him in. I don't want to feel these feelings. I don't want to risk with him. I don't want to risk with anybody. I want to raise my children, and I like this feeling of being separate and in control. Well, that's a really avoidant person, and I get a glimpse that it's all about her relationship with her mother, who basically chose her older sister and adored her older sister and basically ignored her. But, she doesn't want to go there. And I suggest that she go for individual therapy, and she basically tells me to go to hell. So, so she's avoidant. And the way I know that is that no matter how much support I give her and how small the risks are I ask her to take and how much I help her deal with her emotion, you will see it on her face. You will feel it for a moment, and then she cuts it. And no matter what he shows her, even if he's weeping, right, she does this, and she says, oh, I'm sorry you're upset. I'm sorry you're upset. But then, so she stays distant. So really, it's her talk. It's in the end, her stance in the world is, I'm going to stay back and stay in control. Other people are way too dangerous and risky for me. I'm not going to risk it. And that's, some people get stuck there. And I did everything I could, and I showed the pattern. I said, your husband's reaching for you. Are you really sure? You don't want to take a small risk for here. And are you really sure? Are you looking at his face? And she'd get a little bit of doubt, but she'd basically come back to no, because he didn't do the cupboards. So when you know what, nobody can ever be that predictable. Yes, they can. He was supposed to have done the cupboards on, and so here, some people, she's stuck. From my point of view, she's stuck. You can come up with all kinds of labels for her if you want. We don't do that. We're in experiential humanistic therapy. The labels don't help that much. I just watch in the drama how people deal with their emotions and how they engage or disengage from the other person. She's stuck. But I think it was still useful. They have young children. He wants to keep his family. And I think it's also useful for him because he started to understand that he wasn't just this terrible, ridiculous, incompetent guy. He started to understand that she really did have limits as to how much closeness she was willing to tolerate. And he started to grow. He grew a lot. From my point of view, he grew a lot in getting that and trying to deal with that and not, feeling this craziness all the time. He started to understand the situation he was in. So I can't remember the question I was answering. I'm sorry.
Well, I wanted to draw you on the kind of conversation that in terms of attachment patterns, and we talked about the avoidant attachment just now. So what about the anxious attachment? Does that also have a certain...
Anxiously attachment, the most difficult folks to deal with are the very, very, very anxiously attached folks who are often very jealous and massively vigilant all the time, so that, you spend a lot of time slowing them down. I mean, one of the traditional things we do in EFT is we slow things down. We make things more concrete, vivid, and specific. We don't let people talk about in labels. If people say hurt, I'll say, could you help me? Where do you feel the hurt? When do you feel hurt? What does it feel like? What do you do next? So we slow everything down. So I'll give you another example. A man who comes in, he says, the problem in my relationship is that I have high testosterone. My doctor says I have high testosterone, and if only my wife would make love to me twice a day or maybe even 3 times a day, everything would be fine, but she won't. Well, his wife is depressed and withdrawn and very tired of the pressure. Okay, but they've been married for a long time. And this man's framed it that it's all about the fact that she's cold. Well, it's obviously about his attachment anxiety, right? And the trouble is, though, that he is so frantic from my point of view. He doesn't see himself as frantic. He sees himself as very sexy. And he is so frantic. The whole reassurance. They've been together for 30 years, and he says, I married her on the rebound. She really loved my best friend. I don't think she ever really loved me. When I walked down the aisle with her, I didn't believe she loved me. I've just been waiting for her to leave me all these years. They've had 6 children. Okay, and she, but of course he pressures her, and then she shuts him out, and then he says, there you are, you see, I knew you didn't love me. So it's totally tight reinforcing cycle. And it was amazing hard work to slow this man down and continually shift him from the obsession with sex and whether she was going to have sex with him into helping him talk about his anxiety and how he was absolutely tortured by the idea that she was beautiful and special and that he was never going to be special enough for her. And, that was very foreign territory for him. So anxious attachment is also difficult. We have training tapes. We do a lot of, we really believe in showing what we do. So we have lots of training tapes on the ICEFT website. Our center, the not-for-profit we have is called the International Center for Excellence in EFT, ICEFT. It's got a website. And on one of those tapes, I'm working with a couple with this PTSD. It's called EFT in Action. And my goodness, if you want to see anxious attachment, the lady in that session, I do a live session. I mean, she is literally, I'm peeling her off the ceiling. I'm slowing her down. Her husband is trying to come out and talk to her, and she's so agitated. She's smacking her hand, and so in the end, I'm putting my hand on her all the time. I'm slowing her down. I'm talking to her. I'm holding her with my voice. I'm saying, yes, I understand. That is so hard for you. Right. And I'm touching her on the outside of her knee and on her shoulder. And I'm saying, I'm going to stop you right now. So the franticness is sometimes what's difficult. It helps me as a therapist to understand it as panic. Not to say, oh, this lady's got a personality disorder, or she's got no communication skills, or she's deliberately, it helps me to say, this is a human being in panic. And when we're in panic, our vision goes very narrow. We see everything in terms of danger and threat. We don't have any flexibility. And so then it helps me with my patients to just keep slowing her down and stopping her. And of course, he's numbed out from PTSD, so she is in a panic. She can't find him as far as she's concerned, she's lost him. She can't find him. But fascinating couple. So anxious and avoidant play out differently, we stay very concrete in the room and play with the drama rather than sort of think. I don't think of somebody as this person's avoidant. I think of them, right now they're withdrawing all the time in this relationship. And some of it's their style, and some of it's the drama they're courting with their partner.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that the previous example with the cupboards not being finished on the Wednesday, is also a panic because there's clearly a high need for security.
Yes,
the cupboards
it's a high need for control. Yes,
yes, exactly. So it just comes out differently, but it's a panic either way. And to recognize this as a therapist rather than put labels on it, I think sounds a good way of. Yeah.
Hopefully you can get people past that panic into processing it differently. With that lady, I couldn't. Our research says that, in EFT, we get about 70 to 75% of couples out of distress into repair, and that those results are stable over 2 or 3 years. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And we make significant difference for about 86% of couples, but they're not always exactly where they want to be at the end of therapy. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
But, of course, when we're talking here, I remember the extreme couples. I think every therapist remembers the couples, where it was particularly interesting or difficult, or, the thing I find most rewarding is working with a couple where somebody has deep depression or PTSD and watching how the renewed connection with the partner literally begins to help people heal from that. That's very profound and very rewarding for me. I really like working with trauma couples, I think, for that reason. It's totally, totally fascinating.
Well, isolation seems to be a key feature of trauma.
Yes.
So I think that it isn't widely written about. I think Robert Stolaroff wrote about it. But I certainly, from my practice, recognize that. So,
what I say to these military guys is, I say, you know what? You're a good soldier, and you're a strong man, and you're a strong human being, and you're a human being, and your brain isn't wired to fight dragons alone. The movies are rubbish. The big mythical stories are rubbish.
Yes.
The guy who, Beowulf, defeated the dragon with a whole bunch of guys behind him. He didn't actually go in alone. So, and if we decided to fight wars where one soldier went out alone and fought another soldier all the time, the wars would stop instantly. We're just not designed for that. And I think it was Bowlby's profound genius that he understood. He wrote the first book on family therapy, 1944, 44 Juvenile Thieves, and he looked into the faces of those adolescent kids in London that were acting out thieves and said they're in pain and they don't know how to deal with it. And I think that's a profound insight that sometimes, from my point of view, at least in North America, psychology seems to have forgotten about. We've got so caught up in managing people, teaching them skills. I don't believe in teaching couples communication skills because I do this my whole life, and I know that when I'm in a real fight with my husband, my communication skills go straight down the tubes. I can't. I watch it. The EFT therapist part of my brain watching as I do all the stupid things that I watch it with fascination, and I still do them. So it's hopefully I don't stay there, because I do have other experiences. But it's an insight when your amygdala is aroused and your brain is in threat. Insight's nice, but it's no cigar. It's like it's. So it's the attachment tells us the moments that matter, where a relationship is really defined. And I think that's powerful. It seems to me that as we go into the future, I see all kinds of promise here. I see that we can teach people how to have really good bonded relationships that last. And it seems to me, my last book for the public was called Love Sense. And what I write about in that book, it just came out this year. It's called something else. It's called something weird in England.
I've got it on my screen.
The Love Secret. They called it Love Secret, which is kind of weird. But anyway, it's their choice. But what I'm trying to say there is, if we want a really civilized world, if we want a really sane society, sorry, I don't care what you do. There's no way you're going to get that unless you help adults have loving, lasting partnerships, which are the basis of loving, lasting families. You're not going to, I don't care what else you do. I don't care how much technology you have, how much healthcare dollars you pour in. You have to have that. And so this kind of science is, I just see attachment science and bonding science as having amazingly profound possibilities and influence. But then I'm very passionate about what I do. So.
Well, I mean, we haven't always been very good as a profession. I mean, in terms of being psychotherapists, to feed back into the wider society about what our understanding is. I mean, Freud was good about it, but we have a lot to learn how to do that better nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to me that Bowlby said. I mean, Bowlby believed that he couldn't stand up and use the word love. He said, I'll be ridiculed. Well, he was ridiculed anyway. They weren't ready for him. They weren't ready for him. But I mean, personally, I've only done it in the last, I don't know, decade perhaps. Attachment's more pompous, and bonding is okay. But I still recognize that if I stand up at a conference and talk about love, I'm female. I go out on the stage, I talk about love. I'm ready for at least half the audience to dismiss me for it, but they'll only dismiss me for the first 5 minutes. Because,
Good. Good. So I think we need to come to an end. We're running out of time.
It was fun.
Yes, it's fun. I mean, I really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you so much for making the time.
You're most welcome.